Hello, dear students. Jai Hind. Welcome back. Very good morning. As you are well aware that in our quick revision program, we are sometime rather than targeting the whole chapter, we are sometime targeting those complicated topics which we are revising, understand in our QR session. Purpose is only one. Suppose in last QR which you attended in chapter number 6, sorry, you have already attended two lectures of QR for biology. In one chapter we revised, understand chapter number 6, then chapter number 7, and every time when we are just taking the quick revision of any chapter, we are concentrating and we want to take a complete overview and we want to just have a glance of that particular chapter. Suppose in chapter number 6, when we were revising, I told you that the three topics you have to prepare: nutrition, respiration, and excretion, all subtopic under. As well in chapter number 7, when we revised, I told you that the one topic has been excluded, that is coordination in plant. The rest of the topics you have to thoroughly revise, that we have already discussed. Now, dear student, we are just going to uh, take a revision of chapter number 9, Heredity and Evolution. I have seen throughout your WRTs when I am inspecting those WRT and cross checking it, one factor remains common, that in chapter number 9, at some topics the student are finding it little difficult to develop or write answers sticking to the basic content. It happens that the student are not able to answer it properly. Understand? So today, when we are taking a quick revision of chapter number 9, I want to throw some light on those topics where you find some difficulty in understanding, as well some difficulty in answering the MCQs which can be generated from that particular topic. So it remains our target in today's QR when we are discussing chapter number 9. Chapter number 9 we are discussing, okay, title of the chapter, as you all know, heredity and evolution. In my regular lecture, I have properly allocated lecture for enhanced explanation of each and every chapter, okay, each and every topic. But today, in our QR lecture of chapter number 9, okay, we are going to target some of the topics, and at the same time we are also going to understand it thoroughly, okay. So dear student, before we start, I must explain you one very important thing, that in this particular chapter, sometime when you read any answer theoretically, you may find it little difficult to translate it into word formation. Understand, take an example, one of the topic, acquired and inherited traits. Any student will find it little difficult to cope up with the terminology which has been given in textbook. Understand? So we are going to discuss those topic in such a way that you find it little more easier to answer, because in all my quick revision lecture I told you that if you stick to the content and you just verify some of the important prominent word which should appear in your answer, that is sufficient for you to develop your answer. Understand? In this chapter, dear student, the topics which are eliminated already. The one topic I have already sent you that edited list also. 9.1, that is, I am not writing the title, accumulation of variation during reproduction. This topic is already eliminated, so you do not have to bother about this particular topic, accumulation of variation in reproduction. One, that topic is eliminated, and then another topic, you all have the edited copy list. One topic which is also eliminated is topic 9.4, that is about speciation. So these two topic you do not have to prepare. So if you think of the rest of the topic, understand, so that remains topic 9.2. Understand, which involves the title heredity. Understand, and I want to discuss this topic in detail today. We have already discussed in our regular lecture, but at the same time I want to discuss some of the MCQ also. Under this three title comes inherited traits, rule for inheritance of traits, Mendel's contribution, and how do these traits get expressed. Three topics come under this. Understand? Then sex determination, but that you know, and it's not so difficult also. Then in topic 9.3, that is topic of evolution. Okay. In that also I want to throw some highlight at some topic 9.5, that is human evolution. Okay. Human evolution 9.5, that topic. Understand, 9.5 evolution and classification. In that also we want to discuss some. This is 9.6. Okay. 9.5, in that evolution and classification, there also we want to throw some highlight on the topic which you should concentrate, and then comes human evolution. Okay. Now see, dear student, before you prepare this particular chapter, you should list out this way. Two topics are already eliminated, 9.1 and 9.4. So you have to prepare topic 9.2, that is heredity. Then 9.3, where you will discuss about evolution. Then 9.5, evolution and classification. And then 9.6, human evolution. What is my target today is that I want to throw more light on these three topics, and in this topic also we just want to have a quick look at, under the title heredity, whatever experiment performed by Mendel. Understand, that we are going to discuss what is actually. So first we are targeting the topic 9.2. Okay, that is, we are going to discuss about heredity. Now dear student, in this particular topic, what you should target, understand, you should first know the definition of heredity. What is the definition of heredity? The transfer of genetic character from one generation to another generation, that is, from one generation to progeny. Either you speak the word transfer of genetic character, or you can say inheritance of genetic character from one generation to another generation, that is known as a process of heredity. Now, some of the question arose in the mind of scientists at that time also, that when you are speaking that a transfer of genetic character which involves DNA material, you all know, present on our chromosome, understand, and chromosome segment containing DNA are known as gene, that you all know. Now, when you are speaking that heredity means transfer of, understand, characters from one generation to another. Now, lots of question in the mind of the scientist that how these character are inherited in the next generation. Will there be any rule in the nature which is governing this process? Like in classification of element, as I told you, that all scientists of the world were trying to understand some underlying pattern in chemical property. So here also many biologists of the world were trying to understand the process of inheritance of hereditary character from one generation to another, how it must be taking place, because we all know that even two children of the same parent are also containing so many vast variations in their personality traits that we all know very well. So when two or three children of the same parent are also showing such variation, and now when these children grow, they get married, and then the next generation will be showing vast different diversity traits. How can it happen? So some of the scientists of the world have tried to answer this very important question, and among them who tried their best, contribution of Mendel is considered superficial. Understand, contribution of Mendel was not only based on the experiment of science, but it was also based on mathematical probability and calculations. That's why experiment performed by Mendel, at the same time the conclusion which were derived by him are considered very authentic in understanding the process of heredity, that is transfer of character from one generation to another, which we call inheritance of hereditary traits. Understand? See, dear student, two questions which appear on page 147, if you verify, in text question: how do Mendel's experiments show that traits may be dominant or recessive? One of the question, understand, on page 147 in text question, question number 1, and then question number 2. The first question is the first two experiment and the conclusion performed by Mendel. Understand, what is the question? How do Mendel's experiment show that the traits may be dominant or it may be recessive? So our first discussion is just for this dominant and recessive trait. So we are just discussing first this. What do you mean by dominant and what do you mean by recessive traits? That's our first target. So before we perform the experiment, dear student, and we'll try to understand that how MCQs can be generated from that. What is called the dominant trait or recessive trait? So it happens then when progeny are produced by two parents. Understand? This was Mendel's first conclusion in the law of inheritance, that it happens that when two different parents participate in the process of reproduction, the progeny will have dominance of character of only one parent. There you will not see the mix up of the character of both the parents in first generation. That he proved by one experiment which he performed, understand, on Pisum sativum, that is garden P. Understand? He performed one of the experiment to make you understand that in the first generation some of the traits of one parent remain dominant, means that can be expressed under predominantly, and some of the traits cannot be expressed but they become suppressed by that trait. So sometimes we also call it recessive or suppressive trait. He actually confirmed that the first generation of the progeny will always have one dominant trait and one recessive trait. How he proved by experiment that you all know, dear student, the first experiment performed by Mendel. Understand, you can write in your own word also. Mendel's experiment. What is selected for his experiment? He selected garden P for performing his experiment. Understand? He selected, and how will you remember when you want to write short note about this? So suppose, dear student, what he has done. So he wanted to study that when two variate parents participate in the process of reproduction, what can happen. So what he has done, he has taken one tall plant and one short plant. Just suppose I am showing this way only. Tall plant and short plant. Understand, he selected one tall plant and one short plant. Actually, capital T stands for the tallness and small t stands for shortness. He selected two garden pea plant, and actually he paid more importance to which trait, rather than thinking about seeds, rather than thinking about flower. He concentrated on much highlighted characteristic, that's the height of the plant. He concentrated on this. One tall and one short plant he selected, and when he crossbred them, dear student, you need to remember in this way that in first F1 generation, what happened? All plants were taller. This way you can remember and understand. All plants were taller. That means what? When you are speaking that all plants were taller, that simply means that only one trait is dominant, that is the traits of tallness, not the trait of shortness. So if you find the genetic makeup of all this plant, understand, then this is like this, TT. All plant will have genetic makeup TT, but you all know very well one of the very important thing, though they possess capital T, small t traits, understand, but in F1 generation, only one trait is dominant, that is the trait of tallness. This way you can remember. And this way he actually proved that in F1 generation, out of the two traits which were targeted, only one trait was dominant, that is that is the trait of tallness. It may happen the reverse also. Suppose in F1 generation, it can happen that all plants may be dwarf also. Short also means one of the trait has to be dominant traits. Now actually to become more sure, he again cross pollinated. He self pollinated these two plants. Understand? Now, dear student, try to remember this way the short note. When he self pollinated these two plants, understand? Both of F1 generation, he was surprised to found that in next generation this is not happening. In the next generation, you are not observing only the dominance of the tallness. Understand how we must have mathematically calculated. So, in somewhere in my regular lecture, I have shown you. Suppose a mathematical probability table you make. Okay, here you write T. Here you write T. Understand what happened in the next generation. Understand? So, in the next generation, what he found was not only an experiment of science but a precise conclusion according to the mathematics in F2 generation. What were those precise mathematical calculations? Now make a combination TT. This can also be called TT and TT. You understood this? Means in the three plants, understand, this combination is observed. In three plant, you observe the same combination. Understand TT and TT. Here you observe the TT combination only in one plant. That means one thing is clear, that in F2 generation, the ratio of dominant traits and recessive trait, you can say 3 is to 1. To make it more simpler, 75 is to 25 percentage. So he explain, understand that it happens in the next generation. There are mix up of the traits. In F1 generation, only one trait becomes dominant, but in F2 generation, there will be the mix up of the trait. Understand? This is how the character are inherited. Understand it? You must be observing also. Understand in around you that when progeny of a parent is born, it happens sometime that he derive traits of one parent more than the traits of either traits of father or traits of mother will be dominant in that child. But when he produce the next generation, this is not going to happen. There will be the mix up of the character. You understand that one will be the trait for the tallness will be no doubt because it's a dominant trait will be expressed more, but the trait of the shortness will also appear, and for shortness the combination TT is required. So this is the way you can give answer to the first one. You understood this. What is the in-text question in the first one? How do Mendel's experiments show that traits may be dominant or traits may be recessive? So here in the first generation, the dominance of trait tallness was observed, but in the next generation there is a mix-up. So, tallness is dominant trait and dwarfness, that is the short height, understand, that became the recessive trait. So this way by performing experiment he was able to prove that in the generation there can be some dominant trait and some recessive trait. This way he performed an experiment. at the same time, in textbook there is one also. See, dear student, here a MCQ can be designed that when Mendel performed an experiment selecting the garden pea, and when he targeted the traits of tallness and shortness, what is the ratio of dominant trait to recessive trait? 3 is to 1. What is the ratio of recessive trait to dominant trait? 1 is to 3. What is the percentage ratio of recessive trait to dominant trait? 25% is to 75%. That way they can design. Understand? Suppose, dear student, you all know very well that 75% dominant trait and 25% recessive trait. If they give you such type of, suppose, MCQ like this, understand that suppose there are, take an example, suppose there are 20 plants selected, an experiment is performed. In how many plant you will be able to see the dominant trait? So you have to find 75% of 20, and then 25% of 20, that can be the recessive trait. So they can design even by taking the number of plant. You should be very clear about the ratio of dominant to recessive and recessive to dominant. He also performed the same experiment when he targeted some new character, new trait, that is tallness and round seed, shortness and wrinkled seed. Understand, here he just targeted only one trait, that is the trait of height. But to make himself more sure, he again performed another experiment selecting again garden pea, understand, as the raw material for his experiment, understand. But here he targeted the two traits, tallness, dwarfness, round seed and wrinkled seed, and he observed the same type of result in first generation. That in the first generation, understand, in four plants, he observed only one dominant trait, that is tallness and round seed. But when he self pollinated in the next generation, again he found the dominant trait and recessive trait in the ratio of 3 is to 1, means 75% plants were with tallness and round seed, and 25% were dwarf, understand, and with wrinkled seed. So he was sure by just performing these two experiments, thus inheritance of hereditary character happens in this way only, that some trait remain dominant and some trait remain recessive. You understood this? So these two experiments you have to keep in mind, and how to create the genetic makeup, which I sometime told in my lecture, the genotype, unless or gene mixture. So this way you can make TT this way. This is for tallness and this is for dwarfness. Okay. So 2x, when you are asked this first in-text question, that how Mendeleev saw the presence of dominant and recessive trait, you have to answer this way. Is it clear in your mind, dear student? Right. Now see, if you see the second question again, if you see the second question at the same time in in-text question on page 147, understand what is that? You read that question. Actually, here in his first experiment, Mendeleev just gave us an explanation about only how during the process of heredity there will be the inheritance of dominant trait and recessive trait. But at the same time, he also moved ahead in his experiment and actually wanted to prove also that it is not going to happen like that the progeny will always have such type of combination like one dominant and one recessive. No, it can also happen that progeny also develop a variety of character in themselves, understand, by mix up of the character of the parent generation. Understand, you see the second question, dear student, on page 147. When you revise, you need to concentrate on this. How do Mendel's experiments show that traits are inherited independently also? That you understood, that means in next generation it can happen. Here in both the experiment he tried to explain one thing, that one will be the dominant trait and one will be the recessive trait in F2 generation. But he also at the same time explained one very important thing, that progeny also derive independent characters. Understand? He performed another experiment. See, dear student, that simple another experiment which he performed to answer your question number 2, that is inheritance of independent traits. Understand? Independent traits, where again he performed one another experiment. Here, dear student, I am discussing in detail. Though in my lecture I am not able to cover all topics, it may happen, understand, because some of the topic you can even read it about, okay? But the topic which I want to discuss and how MCQs can be generated from that, that is important for me to at least narrate to you, okay? Now see, dear student. Now he performed another experiment to understand how every progeny develops some independent traits which were not in independent traits. Understand, during the process of reproduction, what he did, he again selected the garden pea for performing the experiment, but now he targeted on seeds only. Understand, you all know, when he targeted the seeds, understand, you all know, he targeted the seeds, understand, round and yellow, green and wrinkled, that you all know. See, wrinkled yellow and round green. So here, dear student, RR, remember this, stands for round. Small y stands for green combination. He has selected round green. Please remember this, round green. RR stands for round and YY stands for green. Then he took wrinkled and yellow. So what you will write? Wrinkled. See, R for round. So small r for wrinkled. This way you remember. Small y for green. Okay. So capital Y for yellow. So you can write this way. You have to remember wrinkled and yellow. This way he took, understand, for reproduction two types of plant, one round and green, another wrinkled and yellow, and he wanted to perform an experiment. So actually what happened, understand, in the first F1 generation, see, dear student, you need to remember the combination here. Your mindset has to be very clear. What is I am speaking about? That is R R Y Y R capital Y, R R round, small r wrinkled, R R round, R R wrinkled, small y green, capital Y, that is for yellow. Understand? What you think? Because his first experiment, first two are suggesting that the first generation will have some dominant trait, but here you want to explain that progeny also derive their independent character. You have to keep this diagram in mind for revision of this topic. RRYY, RRYY. So what happened in the first generation? Understand, that is mix up of the in first generation, as you all know, dear student, that in F1 generation some one thing is sure to happen, that one will be the dominant trait and one will be the recessive trait. Understand? So what happened in the first generation? Which are the trait target? Round, green color, wrinkled, yellow color. In first generation, what he found? Round and yellow. That has been written in textbook, and you can prepare from diagram also. Round and yellow combination, that means what? In the first generation, understand, of seed, round and yellow. So round and round means you think about the shape, round and wrinkled. So when you are in the first generation finding R combination, that means round is the dominant trait, wrinkled is the recessive trait. Then here again you found, understand, small y, capital Y. So what happened when you are speaking that the first generation is of round and yellow seed? That simply confines one very important thing, that in the first generation, remember this, dear student, round and yellow were the dominant traits. This can be asked in one line, that when Mendel performed an experiment, how can you assess that in the first generation? Here they can design question anywhere. Here they targeted round, wrinkled, green, yellow. They can change somewhat, but remember one thing. Suppose they ask as it is, you should remember that in the first generation, when round green seeds are taken, wrinkled yellow seeds are taken for fertilization, what happened? That in the first generation, which is the dominant trait? So round is the dominant trait, wrinkled is the recessive trait, green is the recessive trait, and yellow is the dominant trait in first generation. Understand? So those two experiment has already been proved again, that in first generation this is going to happen, that one will be the dominant trait and one will be the recessive trait. This is going to happen in first generation. But when self pollination is again created, understand, between F1 generation plant again. Okay, remember this way. This is also RRYY combination. This is also RR small y capital Y combination. Now, dear student, from here in F2 generation, you need to remember. Okay, how will you remember it? So first in your mind, you need to remember one very important thing. I am just giving you some tricks. Understand, to remember those. F2 generation genotype or genetic makeup. Please, dear student, first you prepare table this way. I am just trying to give you some guideline. Okay. Now see here what you will do. This way you just make a table, and what you are doing here is that for understanding that genetic makeup, okay, make this a little larger one. Okay, try to remember, dear student, why I am targeting those specific topic, because because it's my experience says that the student might be finding that uh, topic more difficult to create those genetic makeup. So first what you should do is that, understand, see here there are four combination, R, small y and capital Y. So this way, dear student, what you should target, please try to understand it. First, write R, R, small r, small r. Round, round, wrinkled, wrinkle, R, R, small r. Then, while you are writing the traits for the color, you take the alternate combination. Y means capital Y, then small y, capital Y, and small y. Is it clear in your mind how to take this R R? That this is only going to give you some idea. Okay, R R, Y, small r, y, small y, small y, small y. Understand? And here, dear student, RY means round yellow. Understand? So here, now you remember this number 9331. RY, R for round, capital Y for yellow. So you can say round yellow. Please remember this. Then capital R, small y. Capital R means round and small r means green. Round green. You see, it has been mentioned. But how to remember this? Small r, capital Y. Small r means wrinkled. And capital Y, as you know, yellow. Then again small r and small y. That means, dear student, small r means wrinkled. And capital Y, again small y, that means green. So you understood this, that in the next generation, plant which are produced in the ratio 9 is to 3 is to 3 is to 1. Understand? Which plant are maximum found in the F2 generation? So having round yellow seed, less than that round green, wrinkled yellow, the least combination which you can see wrinkled green. Understand? So how sometime in my WRT I have asked one question, that during the Mendel's experiment on garden pea plant, where he selected round green and wrinkled yellow seed, what is the ratio of the plant in F2 generation? What is the ratio of round green and wrinkled yellow? So 3 upon 3, 1 is to 1. What is the ratio of wrinkled green to round green? 1 is to 3. What is the ratio of round yellow to wrinkled green? 9 upon 1. So this way it is going to help you a lot when you want to remember such combination and you want to answer all. Understand? And this, dear student, I told you how will you remember R, small r, then capital Y, small y, capital Y, small y. And here so you remember 9, 3 3 ja 9. See, 9, 3 3 ja 9 and 1. Okay. Now, dear student, how can you remember the number as well? So it's so simple to remember. Just you remember the last one. What is that? 32. Now this is 3 ja. So 32 3 ja. Understand? You all know 32 3 ja. This is actually 96. But more than that, 101. The number of the Abhayam police. Understand? Then 108. The medical van. Understand? And then just 315. This way you can remember, and if you total out it, understand that it comes out to be 556 seeds. So here lots of MCQ can be designed, dear student, that he selected 556 seeds to perform the experiment. In how many you observe the combination of round yellow 315, round green combination 108, wrinkled yellow combination 101, wrinkled green combination 32, total 556. But this you need to remember. Understand, this will help you a lot in remembering and developing those combinations. Understand? R, small r, capital Y, capital Y, small y. you can easily remember it. Understand? So this is your answer to that in-text question number 2, where we actually showed, see dear student, here the mix-up of the character is observed. Understand? Round yellow, round green, wrinkled yellow, wrinkled green. That means the next progeny will also express the inheritance of some extra characters in them. It is not going to happen that only the one trait will remain dominant and recessive in the next generation. Understand? And that's actually the uh, essence of inheritance, that the next F2 generation progeny will develop individual expression of traits in themselves. Understand? This way you just try to remember. Okay. So dear student, this is the topic of heredity which I want to target for you to understand in detail. This way, round green, wrinkled yellow, then this combination R small y capital Y, which is the dominant traits. Round dominant trait, this is recessive trait. Yellow dominant, this is recessive trait. And then self pollinated RRYY combination, you will receive this way. Understand? So this way you should remember, will help you a lot in remembering this uh, particular short note also, and remembering how the MCQ can be designed, because I have seen student making some mistake in this. Understood? So take an example, dear students. Suppose I say you that two plants are cross pollinated. Suppose I say, just try to understand that one is tall plant. Suppose having a tall plant and yellow colored flower, and one is short plant. Understand? Having green colored. Suppose I try to design MCQ this way, and I say that in the next generation, understand, plant which are born are tall and green combination. So how can you generate the combination TT? Understand? And YG. These are the dominant traits. So this way you can design any MCQ. This is first topic of heredity, dear student. Understand? Now suppose in topic 9.3, that's the topic of evolution. One of the experiment about that elephant foot we have discussed in detail, but acquired and inherited traits, that's the topic you should target. Understand? Remember one thing, dear student, experience of, I am just explaining the essence of that topic. Acquired and inherited trait. Inherited trait, you understood where there is the role of the germ cell of the parent. Understand? But as far as the inherited traits are concerned, it has nothing to do with whatever other cell makeup is going to happen. Understand? There some experiment, there some discussion of some activities also there about beetle or what. You just think of yourself. They have given one example that during one generation of beetle, due to starvation, if their body makeup become weaker, that is not going to change their germ cell or DNA makeup, which is going to affect the next generation. Next generation is going to happen as per the original generation of the beetle. Means the starvation is not going to change their genetic or DNA makeup. Similarly, if you cut the tail of a mice for generations, it is not going to happen that the tailless mice will be born, because cutting tail doesn't make any change to the germ cell, as you know. So remember one thing, in inherited character, understand, is result of change in your germ cell, not the result of your lifetime experiences. Understand? That's the basic essence of that topic. Okay, now dear student, when you are remembering the topic of evolution and classification, please target the two topic very much, that is homologous organ, understand, and analogous organ. In our WRT also this question were asked so many times. So you are all knowing about homologous organ. See dear student, stick to the basic definition, because in designing the MCQ they may develop so many MCQ from this, but stick to the basic. Homologous means having similar structure but they are designed for different functions. Analogous, having different structure designed for the same function, which gives us an idea that we all have derived from common ancestor. If you just stick to the basic, that homologous means similar structure, different function. Analogous means different structure, similar function. If you stick to this basic, then whenever they design any MCQ, that they give A, B, C, D option and ask you which are homologous organ among all these four. So the basic content has to be in your mind. Similar design, different function, homologous. Different design, similar function, analogous. That you just keep in mind, because that might confuse you sometime. I am not discussing about all this evolution and all, but last topic which I want to share with you is evolution by stage. In that, dear student, you should not make any mistake. Evolution by stage, that is very important for you to understand, because here also again they may develop some MCQ. Okay, when you are talking of evolution by stages, which two organs, which two traits are finding predominance in all organism during the process of evolution. So you all know very well that during the process of evolution we are finding two things very important, which the living organism must have developed in themselves. One is eye and one is wings. Understand that that is seen as a predominant characteristic in every animal during the process of evolution, because production of eye, no doubt one genetic change is not going to develop the eye completely. It is a stage wise and very slow process. Similarly, dear student, the production of wings, where according to the scientists of the world, is not must have been designed for the flying purpose. It has been for the protection of the body against the cold, but later on it is adapted for flight also. Understand? So this way some changes happen during the process of evolution, which is not an instant change. It takes lots of time for this to happen. Now dear student, that is called evolution by stage, by natural selection. But sometime evolution also occur, understand, by some artificial human selection also. Here dear student, you need to target. Okay, take an example, wild cabbage. From wild cabbage so many products were formed by artificial selection by men. Okay, and here you have to concentrate very much. See, first, how will you remember? The distance between leaves is shortened. See, you can just write this way, leaf distance. Understand? Then you write this way, remember this, arrested flower development. Please remember this. Then arrested sterile flower development. Arrested sterile flower development. Then you remember this way, the swollen part. Please remember dear student this way, because it may might confuse you sometime. Swollen part, and then here you write large leaves. Is it clear in your mind? Wild cabbage. Farmer has selected to grow the wild cabbage. Selecting the distance between the leaf is quite less than they develop the cabbage, as you all know. Cabbage which we eat. Now, from the wild cabbage, they develop by artificial selection one another product where they actually concentrated on arrested flower development. They develop broccoli. Understood? Remember this way, dear student. Now, sterile flower arrested development, they actually produce the cauliflower. Now, large leaves means they develop the wild cabbage having large leaves, they develop kale, and then swollen part was artificially selected. Understand? They already develop kohlrabi, okay, kohlrabi, whatever, larbi, okay. So this way you need to remember the name of the product, dear student, okay. Kohlrabi, okay. Kohlrabi, I written the correct. Kohlrabi, okay. So, how will you remember this name? That's very important for you to understand as well. Remember also, sometimes this also might confuse you. From the wild cabbage by artificial selection, when the farmer selected this characteristic to grow wild cabbage having the distance between the leaf very short, it developed a cabbage. When wild cabbage are developed and artificially selected for arrested flower development, it develops broccoli. When arrested development of sterile flower take place, they develop cauliflower. When wild cabbage were grown, selecting large leaves as the main character for it developed kale. And when the swollen part is artificially selected for development, they develop kohlrabi. This way, the five uh, new species were actually generated by artificial selection by men from simple one parent, that is wild cabbage. So this is also, dear student, you should remember wild cabbage, leaf distance shortened cabbage, arrested flower development broccoli, sterile flower development cauliflower, large leaves containing wild cabbage grown more kale, swollen part only the middle swollen part is actually actually grown, then it gave kohlrabi. So this way the five products are produced by artificial selection. Okay, dear student. So see, dear student, we have already sent you already the PDF of edited copy, and according to that PDF which has been declared edited by the board, two topics are eliminated. Whatever I have discussed, I was finding that student might be finding it little difficult to understand. So those topics we have taken in our quick revision program of chapter number 9 today. Okay, dear student, please be precise, read more and more, try to think, understand the basic content. That way only you should revise the topic. Okay, thank you very much.